He comes all the way out to the logo. Here's the switch. It's Luka against Josh Richardson. Left side of the floor. Luka's three is a ring. Gray looking in, has to plug it in, gets it to Wilson. Wilson, thrown by Griner, controlled by Griner. Wood, rebound, Phoenix. They're off and running. They don't take a timeout. No, hit, get it done. Hit at the 1.4 left to go. Fox.
Kyrie Schultz, 4 seconds left. Ionescu,
HB, three.
Got it!
Basketball, a game where the humanly impossible is done on a nightly basis, where there are 50-foot game-winning bombs, dribble moves that lose both the viewer and the defender, and dunks that make it seem like gravity doesn't exist in the arena. This game has been deeply ingrained into American culture, where if you go and ask anybody on the street, they can at least name a few NBA basketball players. One thing Americans can't really name is players from the sister league, the WNBA. One thing about the WNBA that Americans do know about is the storm that it created, specifically about the age-old controversy, the wage gap between genders.
The NBA was originally founded on June 6, 1946 under the name Basketball Association of America. It later took on its name, the NBA, when it joined together with a competing league titled National Basketball League in 1949. The WNBA was founded much later when the 1996 NBA season, the WNBA started to hold ads for the upcoming season. As the years progressed, the two games became increasingly similar, with only a few minute differences in each league, including a smaller ball, smaller quarters, the number of teams, the amount of games played, and the roster size. One key distinction that catches the eye the most is not the rules of the game, but the amount of money a player gets for each game in the respective league.
Figure out where LeBron was going. Talk to me about the pay disparity and how you feel.
I mean, 35.7
to be exact.
I mean, I'm not counting, but the 0.7 would make a difference in my life. That's all I'm saying.
It feels like a minor league situation when
Absolutely.
This is a professional league, subsidized by the NBA, and the differences, I guess, make you grind your teeth a bit.
Absolutely.
She doesn't know if she's going to come back. She said, I've said this many times. The WNBA doesn't pay my bills. Playing here doesn't pay my bills. We make more money overseas. I'm ready to have next summer off and focus on getting a European contract where it's 10 seasons here worth the pay.
I'm really tired of seeing them complain about the lack of pay because they're doing themselves a disservice.
The issue of the wage gap has been apparent in America for a long time. However, the wage gap in the WNBA versus the NBA is huge and has often been pushed on social media, news media, and legends from the NBA, for example, the late Kobe Bryant, and the WNBA. This can be most adequately represented by the average salary of an NBA player and a WNBA player. The average NBA salary was $7.5 million in 2020, while the average salary in the WNBA was only $116,000, which was last reported in 2019. This salary disparity stems from many different factors, including average ticket costs and annual revenue. Although these factors are present, how is there such a major difference between the same game, but with just different genders that make up their players? Well, here's a comparison between two similar shots, two elite players, and their revenue, thus helping us compare the games and the money granted.
Here, we can see the reigning MVP from the WNBA, Jonquel Jones, making a tough three-point shot over a defender in the WNBA Finals. Now here we see reigning NBA MVP Nikola Jokic making the exact same shot from the exact same location. There's no doubt that both of these players are high caliber in their respective leagues given their respective accolades. However, both are unequally compensated for their efforts. Jones, despite being in the same tier as Jokic in the WNBA, makes a mere $200,000 salary compared to Jokic's gigantic $28,540,000. While some economists argue that it is simple economics that Jokic would get paid more since the NBA reels in so much more revenue, it is questionable as to why Jones also gets paid a lower percent of the WNBA revenue than Jokic does for the NBA. They play the same game, they shoot the same shot, They're both at the height of their games, yet they get compensated by their respective leagues differently.
Now, with the wage gap fully discussed, how do different groups perceive the wage gap and what effects does the wage gap cause? In total, there are 4 different groups of stakeholders in this issue. First, players, including NBA players, WNBA players, and prospective NCAA players. 2, media analysts, including talk show hosts and social activist groups. 3, franchise owners. And 4, the viewers of NBA and WNBA games at home. Each one of these groups has a leading perspective that they hold, which is the most favored in the group, and a secondary perspective. We will delve into each of these and determine which one is the leading perspective. Let's first go over players. Although this group is one of the largest groups, as it encompasses so many different subgroups, the consensus believes that the wage gap is a real problem that needs to be fixed. This can be best seen in the actions taken by each group. The WNBA Players Association has been working to narrow the wage gap, as the president Unequal is a great example, as she has used her social media to push for change centered around women athletes. Another example is through NBA players. Players such as Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors, as well as the late Kobe Bryant, expressed support for the WNBA's push for equal pay. One common rebuttal that many NBA players make on top of this perspective, however, is that there's a lack of commitment. The other perspective, which is the secondary one, is one towards silence. Because many WNBA teams are controlled by the owners of NBA teams, such as Herb Simon, who owns both the Indiana Fever and the Indiana Pacers, many NBA players on these teams have their salaries at stake by supporting an end to the wage gap.
Next, let's go over media analysts and social activist groups. Sports talk show hosts and social activist groups follow the primary perspective of the players, with an even stronger opinion of the wage gap being a real problem. One concept they bring to the metaphorical table is that they often have more steps to narrowing the wage gap. This, however, is where the main and secondary perspective emerge. One side believes that the wage gap can be fixed without changing the actual game of the WNBA, but by heavily promoting it. They believe that more social media presence and a greater push for people to both attend and watch NBA games could lead to narrowing the gap. However, the other side believes that the WNBA's core game has to be changed. They believe tweaks such as lowering the rim could help make the WNBA more exciting with more dunks and alley-oops, bringing in more viewers as a result. What perspective do franchise owners hold on this issue? Many franchise owners have influence in both the NBA and the WNBA. For example, Herb Simon owns both the Indiana Pacers, an NBA team, and the Indiana Fever, a WNBA team. Because of this, he must determine how to balance the wages of the players on both of his teams. Staying with the status quo and rewarding NBA players with higher wages is a safe choice for dual franchise owners like Herb Simon, but it hinders the equalization of wages across the NBA and WNBA. Significantly increasing WNBA player wages and taking money away from the complementary NBA players would bring risks of retaliation and uproar from players and fans to dual franchise owners, but it would set a precedent for a broader equalization of wages.
Finally, how does the general public view this issue? The opinions within the general public on the wage gap in basketball are difficult to gauge. Because both social media and news media have such a big influence on this population, we must analyze what effect they provide. We have already explained how influencers and athletes alike have used social media as a platform to raise awareness on the cause. But what is traditional sports media doing to increase WNBA viewership? More recently, with the discussion of the wage gap coming more into frame and sports networks making women's college basketball and the WNBA draft more accessible, there's been more viewer engagement with the league than ever before. And it's increasing steadily too. Now, why does the wage gap of the sport, where everyone in the sport gets too much money for only providing entertainment to our world, matter? The struggle to balance wages between the NBA and the WNBA symbolizes the idea of the overall gender wage gap in America, and it enforces the ideology that women should be paid less than men in all facets of the workforce. As avid fans of sports, we must put this controversy on a pedestal in order to make sure that people understand how important this issue is to our culture. Finally, as we move on, how does this issue affect human needs? It drives our hope for the future, as balancing wages between NBA players and WNBA players will create a firm foundation for the beginnings of a revised society that has inherently equal opportunities for men and women, and drives the concept of self-actualization in regards to the fact that the same work should be paid for the same salary.